The dashboard clock blinked 6:02 a.m. when Danny Cross turned the key in his pickup's ignition for the third time that morning. The engine coughed, sputtered, then caught with a reluctant growl that told him the starter motor had maybe 2 weeks left before it became another bill he couldn't afford. Behind him in the passenger seat, Emma sat with her backpack clutched against her chest, watching the ritual with the quiet patience of a 9-year-old who'd learned not to ask questions when her father's jaw was set that particular way. He didn't look back at her. Couldn't. Not when his hands were doing that thing they did some mornings, the almost imperceptible tremor that started in his fingertips and worked its way up to his wrists. 5 years since Iraq. 5 years since he'd last checked a vehicle for IEDs, since he'd last felt the weight of the bomb suit, since he'd last radioed in. That a convoy route was clear. The shaking always came when he was running late, when the morning felt too much like those Baghdad dawns when being 10 minutes behind schedule meant body bags. The truck lurched forward as he backed out of the driveway. Emma's hand shot out to steady herself against the door, but she didn't complain. She never did. 3 blocks from their house, at the intersection where Maple crossed Franklin, Danny pulled to the shoulder and killed the engine. Emma's voice came soft from behind him. "Dad?" He was already out, circling to the front of the truck, dropping to one knee on the wet asphalt. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the undercarriage, running his fingers along the wheel wells, tracing the brake lines with the kind of focus that made the rest of the world disappear. A sedan honked as it passed. Someone shouted something about blocking traffic. Danny didn't hear any of it. When he climbed back into the cab 2 minutes later, Emma was watching him with those dark eyes that saw too much, understood too much. She was supposed to be worried about 4th-grade spelling tests and whether the other kids would pick her for kickball at recess, not whether her father's PTSD was flaring up again. Her voice stayed gentle. "Why do we always check under the car?" The engine turned over on the first try this time. Danny put the truck in gear, pulled back onto Franklin, and drove 3 more blocks before he answered. "Because things can hide underneath, things people don't see unless they know what to look for." "What kind of things?" He glanced at the rearview mirror, met her eyes for just a second. "Bad things, dangerous things, but we check so we know we're safe." She absorbed this with the seriousness she brought to everything. Then, "Is that what you did in the war?" The question shouldn't have surprised him. Emma had been 4 when he deployed, 7 when he finally came home for good. Old enough to remember him leaving, old enough to notice he came back different. "Yeah, baby, that's what I did. Made sure roads were safe, made sure vehicles didn't have surprises waiting." "Did you save people?" His hands tightened on the wheel. The intersection ahead turned red and he stopped, grateful for the excuse to sit still, to breathe. Behind them, morning traffic was building, the usual rush of people heading to jobs that didn't involve lying in ditches, staring at wires that might or might not be connected to 50 pounds of military-grade explosive. "I tried to save everyone." Emma heard what he didn't say. Her hand reached forward, small fingers resting on his shoulder. "You did good, Dad." The light changed. He drove. Roosevelt Elementary sat at the end of a tree-lined street that probably looked idyllic in real estate photos. Danny knew better. He knew that the oak tree by the front entrance had low branches perfect for a 10-year-old to climb and subsequently break an arm falling from. He knew the blind corner where the buses turned meant drivers couldn't see kids darting between parked cars. He knew the emergency exits had been chained shut for 3 months last year, because someone kept triggering the fire alarm and he'd personally called the fire marshal to report it, because that was the kind of thing that killed people when seconds mattered. Fear is just your brain's way of saying pay attention. Don't run from it. Use it. He'd told Emma that last year when she'd come home crying about a substitute teacher who yelled. He'd told her again 2 months ago when she'd asked why he always parked facing the exit at grocery stores, why he always sat with his back to the wall at restaurants, why he counted the people in every room they entered. Now she repeated it back to him like a prayer. Fear means pay attention. That's right. She climbed out of the truck, shouldered her backpack. See you at 8? The question carried weight. Last Tuesday he'd said 8 and made it by 8:47. The Tuesday before that, 9:15. There was always another job, another transmission that needed rebuilding, another brake line that needed replacing. The bills didn't care about promises to 9-year-olds. But today he met her eyes and meant it. 8 o'clock. I promise. She smiled, and for just a second she looked like she had before he deployed, before her mother decided being a single parent was easier than being married to someone who woke up at 2 a.m. checking window locks. Before Emma learned to measure her father's mood by how many times he circled the block before parking. He watched until she disappeared through the school doors. Then he checked his phone, 6:47 a.m., and pulled up the day's work orders. The first job was a 2015 Honda Civic with a slipping transmission in Overbrook. The second was a Ford F-150 in Germantown that wouldn't start, probably the alternator. The third was a last-minute addition from a regular customer in Chestnut Hill, whose check engine light had been on for 3 weeks and who'd finally admitted her daughter was driving the car to college visits this weekend. And maybe it should get looked at. 3 jobs. If he skipped lunch and the F-150 was actually just the alternator and nothing else decided to break, he'd clear maybe $380 after parts. Rent was due in 6 days. Emma needed new shoes. The ones she had were too small, but she hadn't said anything, just started walking differently to compensate. The electric bill was overdue. He started the truck and headed toward Overbrook. The Civic's owner was a woman in her 50s who answered the door in scrubs, clearly between shifts at whatever hospital employed her. She pointed to the driveway where the car sat, handed him the keys, and said she needed it done by noon because her son needed it for work. Danny nodded, took the keys, and didn't mention that transmissions didn't care about schedules. 3 hours later, he had the transmission pan off and was staring at metal shavings in the fluid that told him this wasn't a simple fix. The torque converter was failing. The woman needed a rebuild or a replacement, and neither was happening by noon. Neither was happening for the $200 she'd mentioned when she called. He pulled out his phone to give her the bad news and saw the text from Mrs. Helen Parker, the neighbor who watched Emma when Danny's work ran late. All good here. Emma doing homework. Take your time. Take your time. As if time was something he had extra of, something he could spend carelessly. He called the Civic's owner, gave her the diagnosis, the price, the timeline, heard the silence on the other end that meant she was doing the same math he did every month. Which bills could wait, which couldn't, whether the credit card had any room left. She went with the cheaper option. Stop leak additive and fresh fluid. It would buy her maybe 6 months. Danny didn't argue. 6 months from now she'd need that full rebuild and it would cost more. But 6 months from now was a problem for future versions of themselves. Today's problem was getting her son to work. He finished at 1:15 p.m., collected $120 and headed to Germantown. The F-150's owner had left the keys under the mat and a note on the windshield. Battery maybe? Ruck won't turn over. Back by 3. Danny popped the hood, touched the battery terminals, corroded but not dead, checked the connections, turned the key. The engine turned over once, twice, then nothing. Not the alternator, not the battery starter motor. He had one in the truck, used, pulled from a junkyard F-150 2 months ago for exactly this kind of situation. It would take 90 minutes to install. The owner would be back at 3. Danny checked his phone, 1:47 p.m. He got to work. By the time the owner returned at 3:20, Danny had the new starter installed, the truck running, and grease up to his elbows. The man handed him $180 cash and asked if Danny could take a look at a weird noise the transmission was making. Danny listened to the truck for 30 seconds and diagnosed a worn U-joint. Quoted him $95 for the part and labor. The man said he'd think about it, which meant no. Danny packed his tools and drove to Chestnut Hill. The third job was a Mercedes SUV in a driveway that cost more than Danny made in a year. The owner was a woman about his age who came out carrying a leather portfolio and car keys, clearly heading somewhere important. "Check engine light," she said, gesturing at the Mercedes. "My daughter's using it this weekend for college tours. Just need to make sure it's safe." Danny connected his diagnostic scanner. The code came back immediately. P0420, catalytic converter efficiency below threshold. He could clear the code. The light would stay off for maybe a week. The converter was failing but not failed. The car would run fine for the college tour, fine for another month probably. But eventually that converter would clog completely and the car would go into limp mode on some highway somewhere, and the daughter would be stranded. The woman was watching him with the particular impatience of someone whose time was worth more than his. "Well, catalytic converter's failing. Not dangerous to drive, but it needs replacing soon. I can clear the code so the light goes off, but I'd recommend getting it done before the trip." How soon is soon? Could be next week, could be next month, but she'll be fine this weekend. Danny thought about Emma, about other people's daughters, about highways at night and cars that died in the wrong places. Probably. The woman checked her watch. "Clear the code. I'll deal with it after the tour." He cleared it, collected $100, drove back toward his side of the city with $400 cash in his pocket, $20 more than he'd projected. Enough for rent, for most of the electric bill, for Emma's shoes. Not enough for the truck's starter motor when it finally died, but that was next week's problem. His phone rang at 6:15 p.m. "Mrs. Parker. Danny, I'm so sorry. My sister just called. She fell and I need to go help her. Can you be here by 7? He was 40 minutes away in rush hour traffic. "I'll be there." He made it by 6:58. Emma was in Mrs. Parker's living room, homework spread across the coffee table, and she looked up when he walked in with the kind of relief that made his chest hurt. Mrs. Parker was already grabbing her purse, apologizing, explaining about her sister's hip and the hospital, and Danny told her it was fine. "Really, go," and pressed 2 20s into her hand. That she tried to refuse and he insisted on because she'd been watching Emma for 5 hours and he wasn't the kind of man who took charity. In the truck, Emma buckled herself in and asked what was for dinner. Danny's mind went blank. He'd been so focused on making 8 o'clock that he'd forgotten. 8 o'clock meant feeding a 9-year-old. The refrigerator at home had eggs, bread, and something that might have been cheese before it evolved into a science experiment. How about pizza? Her face lit up. They didn't do pizza often, couldn't afford to. Really? The $40 extra in his pocket suddenly had a purpose. Really? They stopped at Tony's, the place with the plastic booths and the smell of garlic that had been part of this neighborhood longer than Danny had been alive. Emma ordered a slice of pepperoni and Danny got coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since lunch. She ate with the focused intensity she brought to everything. Tomato sauce on her chin, and Danny watched her and thought about the college tour Mercedes, about daughters heading off into the world, about whether he was saving enough, doing enough, being enough. Emma looked up, caught him staring. "What?" "Nothing. Just glad we did this." "Me too." She took another bite, chewed thoughtfully. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Here it came. The question about her mother, or about money, or about why they'd moved 3 times in 2 years. Danny braced himself. "Sure, baby." "At school today, Mrs. Henderson said fear is bad, that we shouldn't be afraid of things, but you said fear is information." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Which one's right?" Danny set down his coffee. This was the kind of question that mattered, that would stick with her, that would shape how she moved through the world. "Mrs. Henderson's talking about the kind of fear that stops you from trying things. Being afraid to raise your hand in class or make new friends or try out for a team. That kind of fear, that's just noise. You push through it. And your kind? My kind is different. It's the fear that comes from paying attention. The fear that says something's not right, something's dangerous, something needs fixing. That fear kept me alive in Iraq. That fear keeps us safe now." Emma absorbed this. So there's good fear and bad fear? There's fear that protects you and fear that limits you. The trick is knowing which is which. She smiled, satisfied with this answer in a way that suggested she'd been thinking about it all day. Then she went back to her pizza and Danny went back to his coffee, and for just a few minutes the world was small enough to fit in a booth at Tony's. They made it home by 7:45. Emma showered, changed into pajamas, and was in bed by 8:30 with a book about a girl detective solving mysteries in her small town. Danny sat on the edge of her bed the way he had every night since she was born, and she looked up at him with those serious oonths. You made it by 8. Told you I would. You always try to. She said it without accusation, just a fact. Sometimes work takes longer. Sometimes it does, but I always come home. She reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were so small. When had they gotten so small? I know. That's what matters. He kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway watching her settle into sleep. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that let the memories in, that turned shadows into threats and creaking floorboards into footsteps. Danny walked through the house, checking locks. Front door, back door, windows, garage. Then he did it again. Then a third time, because 3 was the number that made the anxiety quiet down, that let him breathe. At 9:15 he was sitting at the kitchen table with a beer he wasn't really drinking, and a stack of bills he wasn't really reading when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. 2007 Mercedes SUV. Route 76 near Conshohocken. Owner will pay cash for roadside service. He should have said no. Should have explained that he didn't do after-hours calls, that he was done for the day, that he'd already made his numbers. But cash was cash, and Route 76 was maybe 20 minutes away, and the truck's starter motor was living on borrowed time. He checked on Emma, still asleep, and texted Mrs. Parker. Emergency call. Can you come sit with Emma for an hour? She replied immediately, on my way. By 9:45 he was on Route 76, rain starting to fall. Windshield wipers struggling against the October storm that had been threatening all day. Traffic was light, just the usual evening flow of people heading home from late shifts and dinner dates and all the normal things normal people did. Then he saw the Mercedes pulled onto the shoulder with its hazards blinking. A figure stood beside it, barely visible in the rain. A woman in a dark coat, phone pressed to her ear. Danny pulled in behind her, grabbed his toolbox, and climbed out into the weather. She turned as he approached, ending her call. Even in the rain and the dark, he could see she was someone used to being in control, the way she stood, the way she assessed him, the way her voice came out sharp and irritated. Are you from the service I called? Danny Cross, you texted about a Mercedes with problems? The tire blew. I have people coming, but they won't be here for 20 minutes and I can't stand in the rain waiting. He looked at the front passenger side. The tire wasn't just flat, it was shredded, rubber hanging in strips from the rim. He knelt, examining it with the flashlight from his phone. The woman's voice came from above him. Are you done fixing that tire, or are you planning to rob me after? Danny didn't respond. His attention had caught on something that made his pulse spike, that made his hands steady in the way they only did when the work mattered. The sidewall of the tire showed a cut, not a tear, not a puncture, but a cut. Too clean, too deliberate, too much like the sabotage he'd seen on convoy routes when the enemy wanted vehicles to fail at specific speeds in specific locations. He shifted his light, examining the wheel well. The brake line behind the rotor had a sheen to it, a wetness that wasn't rain. His fingers touched it, came away slick, hydraulic fluid. His mind went to Baghdad, to Route Irish, to the Humvee that had failed its brakes at 60 miles per hour and rolled 3 times before coming to rest upside down in a ditch. He'd been the one who'd had to cut them out. 3 survived, 1 didn't. The investigation afterward had shown deliberate tampering, a pinhole in the brake line, invisible until pressure built up, until speed made it catastrophic. This was the same. Someone had weakened the tire, nicked the brake line, created a trap that would trigger at highway speeds. The tire would blow, the driver would brake, the fluid would spray, and by the time they reached the curve half a mile up the road, Danny stood abruptly. The woman was watching him with confusion shifting toward concern. His voice came out level, controlled, the way it had when he was radioing in IED locations. "Ma'am, at 70 miles per hour, this car becomes a coffin." She blinked. "What?" "The tire wasn't an accident. Someone cut it. Someone also damaged your brake line. If you'd kept driving, if you'd hit that curve up ahead..." He stopped. She didn't need the details. "Don't drive this car." "That's absurd. It's a flat tire." "It's sabotage." The word hung in the air between them. Rain drummed on the Mercedes's roof. Headlights from passing traffic swept across them in rhythmic intervals. She started to respond, but whatever she was going to say died as a convoy of black SUVs suddenly appeared, pulling in around them with the precision of a military operation. Doors opened. Men in dark suits emerged, moving with the controlled urgency of trained security personnel. The nearest one locked eyes on Danny, his hand drifting toward his jacket in a way that suggested he was armed and willing to use it. "Step back from the vehicle, now!" Danny raised his hands slowly, more tired than intimidated. He'd been held at gunpoint by actual insurgents. Suburban security didn't rate. "Tires changed. Jack's still under load. If you move it too fast, you'll shift the balance." "I said step back." The woman's voice cut through. "Let him speak." The security man, clearly the leader from the way the others deferred, turned to her. "Ma'am, we need to secure the area." "I understand, but he just told me someone sabotaged my car." That got their attention. Every man's posture shifted, threat assessments recalculating. The leader's eyes returned to Danny. "What exactly are you claiming?" Danny crouched beside the wheel well again, gesturing for them to look. "See the cut on the sidewall? Too clean for road debris. And the brake line. Someone wiped it recently. Rain would coat the whole line. That spot's clean because someone touched it." The leader knelt beside him, examining. For several seconds he said nothing, then, "This scoring pattern on the sidewall. Deliberate weakening," Danny finished. "Designed to fail at speed." The woman stepped closer, her expensive coat darkening with rain. "How would you know what deliberate sabotage looks like?" Danny stood, meeting her gaze. He could tell her, could explain about Iraq, about EOD, about the 47 men he'd saved and the one he hadn't. Could watch her expression change from suspicion to something else, pity maybe, or worse, gratitude. Instead, he kept it simple. "I used to work around vehicles that people really wanted destroyed." The security leader pulled out a phone, speaking quietly into it. The other men spread out, scanning the tree line, checking sight lines. One of them approached with a diagnostic scanner. The woman was still watching Danny. "What's your name?" "Danny Cross. I'm Sarah Bennett." She said it like he should know the name. He didn't. "This is Frank Mitchell, head of my security team." Frank straightened from his examination of the brake line. "He's right. This was tampered with." Sarah's expression hardened into something cold and calculating. "Check the other vehicles." The security team moved immediately, flashlights cutting through the rain as they examined the convoy's 3 other SUVs. Danny stood beside his truck, watching the operation unfold with professional interest. They were good, methodical, thorough, missing nothing. Within 5 minutes, they'd found a spike insert lodged near the suspension of the second vehicle, designed to finish tearing the tire after the initial cut weakened it. Frank returned to Sarah, his face grim. "Ma'am, we need to assume someone mapped our entire route." "Agreed." She pulled out her phone, typed something quickly. "I'm calling this in to FBI. In the meantime," she looked at Danny. "Mr. Cross, you stopped to help a stranger. Then you identified a professional hit disguised as mechanical failure. That suggests a particular skill set." Danny saw where this was going and didn't like it. "Lady, I changed your tire. That's as involved as I'm getting." "Someone just tried to kill me. Someone who's still out there." She gestured toward the dark highway. Someone who now knows their trap failed because you spotted it. The implications settled over him like cold water. Whoever had planned this had spent hours, maybe days, setting it up. They'd studied routes, timing, security procedures. They'd built a trap that should have been invisible. And Danny had dismantled it in 5 minutes. Frank's voice was careful. "Mr. Cross, where did you learn to identify vehicle sabotage?" The question he'd been avoiding. Danny looked at the Mercedes, at the shredded tire and the damaged brake line, and saw the Humvee en route Irish. Saw the blood, heard the screaming, felt the weight of the bolt cutters in his hands as he tried to cut through the seatbelt before the fuel caught. EOD Marine Corps, Iraq, 2010 to 2015. Understanding rippled through the security team. Frank's expression shifted from suspicion to something closer to professional respect. Sarah stepped closer, rain running down her face, mascara starting to smudge. "How many times have you seen sabotage like this?" "Enough times." "And you stopped it how many times?" Danny's jaw tightened. 47 vehicles, 47 crews, all made it home. The number hung there. What he didn't say, what he never said, was that 48 vehicles had been hit, that one crew hadn't made it home, that he still saw Corporal Morrison's face in his dreams, still heard himself saying, "It's okay, stay with me, we'll get you out," and knowing even then that they wouldn't, that he'd been too slow, that fear is just information unless you're too late to use it. Frank was talking into his phone again. Sarah was watching Danny with an expression he couldn't quite read. Calculation mixed with something that might have been respect or might have been desperation. Then headlights appeared in the distance. A white cargo van approaching slowly, too slowly. Danny's instincts kicked in before his brain could catch up. "That van, what's it doing?" Frank spun, hand going to his jacket. The security team shifted into defensive positions around Sarah. The van crawled past, maybe 50 yards away, no plates visible in the rain, windows tinted, just slow enough to observe, just fast enough to avoid drawing too much attention. Danny watched it disappear into the rain, and every training alarm in his head was screaming. "They're checking if it worked." Sarah's voice was quiet, "And now they know it didn't. Which means they'll adapt." Danny turned to her and for the first time really looked at who he was talking to. Expensive coat, designer shoes ruined by rain, the kind of confidence that came from boardrooms and corner offices. Someone important enough to warrant a 4-vehicle security convoy. Someone important enough to kill. Frank ended his call. "FBI's en route. Local PD setting up roadblocks. Ma'am, we need to get you somewhere secure." "Agreed." Sarah looked at Danny. "Mr. Cross, you're coming with us." "No, I'm going home to my daughter." "You identified the sabotage. You saw the van. You're a material witness. Then the FBI can take my statement tomorrow." "Someone just tried to kill me," Sarah said, and for the first time her composure cracked enough to show the fear underneath. "Someone professional enough to plan 3-stage sabotage, to map my security routes, to know exactly where and when I'd be vulnerable. That person now knows you exist, that you saw their work, that you can identify it." The words were hammering against Danny's determination to walk away, to go home, to check on Emma and make sure she was safe. But Sarah wasn't wrong. Whoever had planned this had resources, expertise, and a willingness to kill. And Danny had just made himself visible to them. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Parker. "Emma sleeping soundly. I can stay all night if needed." The universe offering him a choice. Walk away, let the professionals handle it, be home by midnight. Or stay involved in something that smelled like the kind of trouble that followed you home, that put 9-year-olds in crosshairs. Frank was giving orders, organizing the convoy for movement. Sarah was still watching Danny, waiting for his answer. He thought about Emma asking why they checked under the car every morning. Thought about fear being information. Thought about 47 saves and 1 failure and the promise he'd made to himself after Corporal Morrison that he'd never be too slow again. Never ignore the signs, never walk away when he saw danger. One condition. His voice came out rougher than intended. I need to call my daughter, tell her I'm helping someone, that I'll be late. Sarah nodded. Of course. Danny pulled out his phone, dialed Emma's number, knowing she wouldn't answer, that Mrs. Parker would see him calling and know to let Emma sleep. The call went to voicemail. Hey baby, it's Dad. Something came up. Someone needs help with their car. Real help. I'm going to be later than I thought. Mrs. Parker's there. You're safe. I love you. I'll see you soon. He ended the call and looked at Sarah. Let's get this done. Frank led them to the lead SUV. Sarah climbed in back. Danny took the passenger seat. The security team loaded into the other vehicles with military precision. As they pulled onto the highway, Danny noticed Frank's eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds, scanning for threats. Professional paranoia, the kind that kept people alive. Where are we going? Danny asked. Secure location, 20 minutes out. And then? Then we figure out who wants Ms. Bennett dead badly enough to build a 3-stage vehicle trap. The convoy moved through the rain, maintaining exactly 35 miles per hour. Slow enough to be safe, fast enough to not draw attention. Danny watched the highway signs pass, calculating distances, noting exit ramps, doing the automatic threat assessment that had become reflex. From the back seat, Sarah's voice. Mr. Cross, you said you saved 47 vehicles. Over what period? 5 years. That's averaging almost 10 a year. Some years were busier than others. And the one you didn't save? There it was. The question everyone eventually asked because they wanted to understand, wanted to quantify, wanted to turn trauma into data they could process. Danny kept his eyes on the road. Corporal James Morrison, February 2014, Route Irish checkpoint, brake line sabotage similar to yours. He was doing 60 when the line failed. Vehicle rolled. I got to him in 4 minutes, wasn't fast enough. Silence from the back seat, then, I'm sorry. So am I. Frank spoke without taking his eyes off the road. Route Irish, Baghdad. Yeah, that was the deadliest road in Iraq for a while. Still is, probably. The convoy took an exit, heading into an industrial area where warehouses sat dark and empty. Frank's phone buzzed. He listened, then glanced at Sarah in the mirror. FBI team is 20 minutes out. Police have the area locked down. No sign of the white van. They wouldn't stick around. Danny was watching the warehouses, the empty parking lots, the 2 dark spaces between buildings. They got what they came for, confirmation. Confirmation of what? Sarah asked. That their trap failed, that someone interfered. They'll be planning the next move already. Frank's hands tightened on the wheel. You think there'll be another attempt? People who plan something this careful don't give up after one failure. They adapt. The convoy pulled into an underground parking garage, security gates closing behind them. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh white light. Frank parked and the team emerged, forming a protective circle around Sarah as she exited. Danny climbed out more slowly, taking in the space. 2 exits, concrete pillars that could provide cover. Security cameras in 3 corners. Good position for defense. Bad position if someone blocked the exits. An elevator opened and 3 men in FBI windbreakers emerged. The lead agent, salt and pepper hair, the weathered look of someone who'd been doing this for decades, headed straight for Sarah. Ms. Bennett, Agent Rodriguez, we spoke on the phone. They shook hands. Rodriguez's eyes shifted to Danny. And you are? Danny Cross. I'm the one who found the sabotage. Rodriguez's expression changed, became more focused. We'll need your full statement, everything you saw, everything you did. For the next hour, Danny repeated the story. The text requesting roadside service, arriving to find Sarah, examining the tire and finding the cut, spotting the brake line damage. The white van, his background in EOD that allowed him to recognize professional sabotage. Rodriguez took notes, asked clarifying questions, had Danny sketch the cut pattern on the tire. When he was done, he leaned back and studied Danny with the look of someone reassessing their initial assumptions. Mr. Cross, in your professional opinion, was this sabotage designed to kill? Yes. Not just disable the vehicle. If they wanted to disable it, they'd have cut the tire completely. This was designed to fail at highway speeds. The brake line would have opened under pressure. Ms. Bennett would have hit that curve at 60, 70 miles an hour with no brakes and a blown tire. Danny paused. I've seen what that looks like. It's not survivable. Sarah was sitting across the room with Frank, but she'd gone very still at Danny's words. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And the white van? Confirmation team, making sure the trap worked. When they saw the convoy still intact, still mobile, they knew something had gone wrong, which means the people behind this now know their plan failed, and they know I'm the reason why. The words settled over the room like a weight. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team, then looked back at Danny. Mr. Cross, I'm going to be direct. You've just made yourself a target. Whoever planned this spent significant resources, time, expertise, money. They don't know your name yet, but they saw you. They know you interfered. If they're as professional as you suggest, they'll identify you within 24 hours. Danny's stomach went cold. I need to get home to my daughter. We'll provide protection. No. The word came out harder than intended. No cops at my house, no protection detail. You put armed guards around a 9-year-old, you're telling her the world isn't safe. I won't do that to her. Rodriguez started to argue, but Sarah cut him off. Let me talk to him. She stood, gesturing for Danny to follow her to the far corner of the garage. When they were out of earshot, she turned to face him. I understand wanting to protect your daughter's sense of safety. But Mr. Cross, Danny, someone just tried to kill me with the kind of planning that suggests significant resources. That same person will come after you to eliminate a witness. Then I'll deal with it. How? You're a mechanic. They're professionals. Danny met her eyes. I was a professional too. Different kind, but the skills transfer. She studied him for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. How old is your daughter? 9. What's her name? Emma. Sarah's expression shifted into something that might have been pain. I had a daughter. Would have been 12 now. Miscarriage at 6 months, 7 years ago. The confession hung between them. Danny didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Sarah continued. My husband, he died 2 years ago. Car accident, brake failure on a mountain road. She paused. At the time, I thought it was just bad luck, bad maintenance. But now, hearing you describe this sabotage, the way the brake line was damaged, understanding crashed over Danny like cold water. You think they killed him too. I think someone wants the Bennett family dead. I think they killed my husband, tried to kill me tonight, and will try again until they succeed. Her voice hardened. And I think the only reason I'm alive right now is because you stopped to help a stranger. I stopped because that's what you do. Most people don't. Most people drive past, keep their heads down, stay uninvolved. She looked toward where Rodriguez and Frank were deep in conversation. You're different, and that difference saved my life. Danny thought about Emma, about promises, about the old life he'd tried to leave behind when he came home from Iraq, about how that life kept finding him anyway, kept pulling him back into situations where the stakes were life and death and split-second decisions. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma, must have woken up. Dad, where are you? Mrs. Parker says you're helping someone. Are you okay? He typed back quickly. I'm fine, baby. Helping a lady with car trouble. Be home soon. Love you. The lie tasted wrong. He wasn't fine. This wasn't simple car trouble, and soon was looking less likely by the minute. Sarah was watching him. That's her? Yeah. What are you going to tell her? The truth. Eventually. That I saw someone in danger and I helped. Danny pocketed his phone. But right now, I'm going to make sure she stays safe while I figure out what happens next. Frank approached, his expression grim. Ms. Bennett, we have a problem. Everyone's attention shifted to him. Security footage from the gas station where you stopped earlier. We found the white van. It was parked there for 15 minutes right when you were inside making calls. Sarah's face went pale. They were watching, waiting. Gets worse. We pulled highway camera footage from the route ahead. There's an oil slick on the road about 3 miles from where Mr. Cross found you. Perfectly positioned on the curve. Fresh. Wasn't there this morning. Danny felt his chest tighten. That was the kill zone. The tire would fail. She'd brake, hit the oil, and vehicle goes off the road, Frank finished. 300-foot drop to the ravine below. Rodriguez was already on his phone, ordering road crews to the location. Sarah had gone very still, her composure finally cracking enough that Danny could see the fear underneath. This wasn't just one trap, she said quietly. It was 3. The tire, the brake line, the oil, layered, redundant. Danny nodded. Someone really wanted to make sure you didn't survive tonight. The convoy rolled out of the parking garage at 11:47 p.m. with Frank behind the wheel, and Danny in the passenger seat, studying a map of the alternate route Rodriguez had provided. Sarah sat in back, her phone pressed to her ear as she rescheduled meetings and made excuses that sounded plausible to whoever was on the other end. The 3 remaining security vehicles formed a protective box around them, headlights cutting through rain that had intensified into a downpour. Danny traced the route with his finger, noting intersections, highway merges, the places where traffic would thin and vulnerability would increase. The new path avoided the oil-slicked curve entirely, taking them through suburban back roads toward a FBI safe house 40 minutes north. It looked clean on paper, but then so had the original route. Frank's eyes never stopped moving. Mirrors, road, mirrors again. The kind of hypervigilance that came from years of keeping people alive in situations where split-second awareness meant the difference between going home and going to the morgue. You do this in Baghdad? Frank's voice was quiet enough that Sarah wouldn't hear over her phone conversation. Different vehicles, same principle. How many convoys did you run? Danny didn't look up from the map. Stopped counting after 100. And you always checked every vehicle personally? Every single one. Tires, brake lines, fuel systems, electrical. If someone could sabotage it, I checked it. Frank was quiet for a moment, then, the one you lost, Morrison. What happened? The question shouldn't have surprised Danny. It was the question everyone asked eventually, the one they circled around until they felt like they'd earned the right to voice it. Frank had earned it by treating Danny like a professional, instead of a random civilian who'd wandered into something over his head. We were rotating convoy security. Morrison's team was heading back to base after a supply run. Standard route, one we'd cleared dozens of times. Danny's hands tightened on the map. Someone had been patient, waited until we got comfortable, until the checks got routine, placed a slow leak in the brake reservoir. Nothing that would show up in a standard inspection. Nothing that would fail immediately. Just a pinhole that would drain fluid over time, over miles. And by the time he needed the brakes, there was nothing left. He went off the road at 63 miles per hour. Vehicle rolled 4 times before it stopped. Danny's voice stayed flat, clinical, the way it had to stay when discussing things that would otherwise tear you apart. I got there in 4 minutes, cut him out in 6, he died in 7. Frank drove in silence, processing. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the storm. Finally, 4 minutes is fast. Most people wouldn't have made it there at all. Wasn't fast enough. No, but it was faster than anyone else would have been. Frank glanced at him. You carry that around every day? Every single day. Good. Danny looked at him sharply. Frank's expression hadn't changed. You carry it, you remember it, you use it. That's how you spotted what happened to Ms. Bennett's car in 5 minutes when my entire team missed it. Morrison died. 47 others didn't. Tonight, Ms. Bennett didn't. The math works. The words landed hard because they weren't comfort, weren't absolution, were just the brutal calculus of a profession where success meant preventing deaths you'd never know about while failures carved themselves into your memory forever. From the back seat, Sarah ended her call. "That was my VP of operations. I told him I'm working from home tomorrow. He thinks I'm avoiding protesters." Danny turned in his seat. "Protesters? Tomorrow's board meeting. We're voting on a contract with the Pentagon. $2.3 billion for AI-assisted targeting systems. Half the company thinks it's our patriotic duty. The other half thinks we're building Skynet." "Which half are you?" Sarah's smile was tired. "The half that thinks defense contractors don't get to have opinions about foreign policy. We build what the military orders, they decide how to use it." "Convenient philosophy? Practical philosophy?" Her voice hardened. "My husband designed the core algorithms before he died, spent 8 years of his life on it. I'm not letting the board sell his work to the highest bidder just because I'm dead." The pieces clicked together in Danny's mind. This vote, it happens tomorrow, 10 a.m. And if you're dead, you can't vote. More than that, if I'm dead, my shares revert to a trust controlled by the board. They can sell the patents, the technology, everything Michael built. Frank swore under his breath. "Who benefits from that sale?" "About 6 different defense contractors I can name, plus whatever foreign interests want AI weapons technology badly enough to kill for it." Danny thought about the precision of the sabotage, the resources required, the planning. This wasn't corporate espionage. This was assassination disguised as an accident. Someone wanted you dead in a way that wouldn't trigger investigations. Which is why the oil slick, the tire, the brake line, all of it was designed to look like mechanical failure in bad weather. The convoy slowed as they approached a traffic light. Frank's hand drifted toward his jacket. 2 of the security vehicles pulled forward, blocking intersecting roads. When the light changed, they moved through in formation, precise and professional. Danny's phone buzzed. Text from Emma. "Can't sleep. When will you be home?" His chest tightened. He typed back, "Soon, baby. Try to rest. I love you." The lie sat heavy. Soon was relative when someone was hunting you. Sarah was watching him. "Your daughter?" "Yeah." "What will you tell her about tonight?" "That I helped someone who needed it. That sometimes helping people takes longer than expected." "Does she know about Iraq? About what you did there?" Danny pocketed his phone. "She knows I was a Marine. Knows I came home different. We don't talk about the details." "Why not?" "Because she's 9. Because she shouldn't have to carry what I carry." Sarah's expression softened into something that might have been understanding or might have been grief for the daughter she'd lost. "She'll figure it out eventually. Children are perceptive. Already has. Asks why I check under our car every morning. Why I sit facing doors in restaurants. Why I count exits wherever we go." Danny looked out at the rain. "I tell her it's habit, but she's smart enough to know it's more than that." "What will you tell her when she's older?" "The truth. That fear is just information. That paying attention keeps you alive. That sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing to do." Frank took an exit onto a 2-lane road that cut through dense woods. The security vehicles followed, maintaining distance. Darkness pressed in from both sides, broken only by occasional streetlights that turned the rain into silver curtains. Sarah leaned forward between the seats. "Danny, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "When you found the sabotage, when you realized what it meant, why didn't you just tell me and leave? Why stay involved?" The question deserved honesty. "Because walking away meant you might die. Because I've seen what happens when people ignore warning signs. Because I made a promise to myself after Morrison that I'd never be too slow again. Never look away from danger when I could do something about it." That's a hell of a burden to carry. It's the only burden worth carrying. Frank's phone buzzed. He answered on speaker. Rodriguez's voice came through with the sharp clarity of someone delivering bad news. "We have a problem. Highway Patrol just found the oil slick cleanup crew. 3 men, all unconscious, drugged." Sarah went rigid. When? Best guess about 2 hours ago. Whoever did it knew we'd find the oil, knew we'd send cleanup, knew exactly how to take them out without raising immediate alarm. Danny's mind raced through implications. They're controlling the narrative, keeping options open. For what? Frank's voice was tight. For finishing the job. Danny pulled out the map again, studying it with new urgency. This route we're on, who knows about it? FBI, my security team, and local police. Frank's eyes flicked to the mirror. Why? Because professionals don't just plan one trap. They plan for contingencies. They adapt. As if on cue, headlights appeared behind them, two motorcycles moving fast, weaving through the sparse traffic with aggressive precision. Frank saw them instantly. Contact rear, two bikes. The security vehicles shifted formation, one dropping back to intercept. But the motorcycles split, one going left, one right, flanking the convoy with the kind of coordination that spoke to training and practice. Danny twisted in his seat, watching. They're not attacking. They're observing. Observing what? Who's in which vehicle, what our formation looks like, how we respond to threats. The lead motorcycle pulled alongside the convoy, close enough that Danny could see the rider's helmet turn toward their SUV. For 3 seconds, rider and passenger made direct eye contact. Then the bike accelerated away into the darkness. Sarah's voice came from the back, barely controlled. Did they just confirm which vehicle you're in? Danny's stomach was ice. Frank, we need to change vehicles, now. Can't stop here. Too exposed. Then we switch at speed. You've done protective vehicle swaps before? Frank's hands tightened on the wheel. Not in 20 years. It's like riding a bike. Call the trail vehicle, tell them to pull up alongside. For a moment, Frank hesitated, weighing options against risk. Then he keyed his radio. Unit 3, prepare for passenger transfer. Come alongside. One of the rear SUVs accelerated, pulling even with them. Danny was already unbuckling Sarah's seatbelt. Ms. Bennett, we're going to move you to the other vehicle. When I say go, you're going to climb through the window. Frank will maintain speed. The other driver will match us. You'll have maybe 3 seconds. Sarah's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. I understand. Frank, on my mark. 3, 2, 1, go. Windows rolled down simultaneously. Wind and rain howled into the cabin. The other SUV was 18 inches away, holding position with the precision of a professional driver. Sarah climbed through the window, hands reaching across the gap. Security personnel in the other vehicle grabbed her, pulled her through. 5 seconds total. Clean. Danny followed. Less graceful but functional. Frank waited until they were both clear. Then the vehicles separated, reforming the convoy with Sarah now in Unit 3 instead of the lead vehicle. The new driver was a woman in her 30s with the kind of calm competence that came from doing dangerous things. So often they became routine. She didn't ask questions, just drove. Sarah was shaking, adrenaline catching up with action. That was necessary. Danny checked behind them. The motorcycles were gone, but that didn't mean safety. They confirmed which vehicle you were in. Now they're reporting back. Whoever's running this operation will adjust their next move based on current intel. How do you know they're reporting back? Because that's what I do. You don't waste resources on blind attacks. You gather intelligence, you adjust, you strike when the target is most vulnerable. The radio crackled. Frank's voice. Approaching the rendezvous point. FBI confirms safe house is secure. Danny studied the map. The safe house was a converted industrial building in a semi-rural area. Good sight lines, limited access points, easy to defend. Assuming no one had compromised it. Rodriguez, you trust the security at this location? Static. Then Rodriguez's voice. Vetted personally. Only 5 people know the address. It's as safe as we can make it. Which wasn't the same as safe, but it would have to do. The convoy turned onto a private road, gates opening automatically as they approached. The building came into view. 3 stories of brick and steel, windows dark except for perimeter lights that turned the rain into glowing streaks. They parked in an underground garage identical to the first one. FBI agents were waiting, forming a corridor from the vehicles to the elevator. Sarah was moved quickly, surrounded by bodies and bulletproof vests. Danny followed more slowly, his mind cataloging details. Security cameras in 6 locations, 2 armed guards at the elevator, reinforced walls, good defensive position. But defense was just another word for waiting for the attack to come. The elevator opened into a 3rd-floor apartment that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd read a manual on secure locations but had never actually lived in one. Functional furniture, no decorations, windows with bulletproof glass and blackout curtains. Everything was beige and sterile and temporary. Sarah moved to the window, looking out at nothing. Frank posted guards at the door. Rodriguez set up his laptop on the dining table and started pulling up surveillance feeds. Danny found himself in the kitchen, staring at a coffee maker that probably hadn't been used in months, trying to remember the last time he'd felt this particular combination of exhaustion and alertness. Iraq, probably. The nights when mortars were hitting the base and you knew sleep was impossible, but your body demanded it anyway. His phone buzzed. Emma again. "Dad, I'm scared. Mrs. Parker says you're okay, but I want you to come home." The words cut deeper than any attack could have. He called instead of texting. She answered on the first ring. "Dad? Hey, baby, I'm okay. I promise I'm okay. Mrs. Parker said you're helping someone important. Is it dangerous?" Lying to Emma felt wrong in a way that lying to anyone else didn't. "It's complicated. Someone had car trouble and it turned into something bigger. But I'm safe. FBI agents are here. Everything's under control." "FBI? Dad, what's going on?" He closed his eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Remember what I told you about fear being information?" "Yeah. Well, tonight I got some information that said someone was in danger, real danger, and I couldn't just walk away. Do you understand?" She was quiet for a moment. Then in a voice that sounded older than 9 and like in Iraq, like when you saved those soldiers. "Yeah, like that." "Okay." Her voice steadied. "Then you have to help. But Dad, you have to come home too." "I will. I promise." "You promise or you hope?" The question gutted him because she'd learned to tell the difference. Learned that sometimes his promises were really just optimistic projections. "I promise, Emma, whatever it takes, I'm coming home." "Okay, I believe you." A pause. "Dad, the people you're helping, make sure they know you have me. Make sure they know you're not just some person who can do dangerous things. You're my dad first." Tears stung his eyes. "I will, baby. Get some sleep. I'll see you in the morning." In the morning. For real this time. For real. He ended the call and stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, trying to push the emotion down deep enough that it wouldn't interfere with thinking clearly. Sarah appeared in the doorway. She'd changed out of her wet coat into dry clothes someone had provided. Simple jeans and a sweater that looked nothing like the executive armor she'd been wearing earlier. "That was her?" Danny nodded. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I'm helping someone. That I'll be home in the morning. Can you keep that promise?" "I have to. She's learned to tell when I'm lying." He set the phone on the counter. "Your husband. The car accident. Tell me exactly what happened." Sarah moved into the kitchen, putting space between them and the others. 2 years ago. October, like tonight. He was driving home from the lab late evening. Mountain Road near our house. Witnesses said the car went off the road at high speed, rolled multiple times. Brake failure was the official cause. Investigators said the line had corroded, failed under pressure. Who investigated? Local police, insurance company. We had the car inspected independently. Everyone agreed. Mechanical failure, bad luck, no foul play. Because they weren't looking for foul play. Danny's mind was working through scenarios. A slow leak in the brake line placed correctly would look exactly like corrosion. By the time anyone examined it, there'd be no way to prove sabotage. Sarah's face had gone white. "You're saying someone killed Michael and made it look like an accident?" I'm saying if someone wanted you dead tonight using the exact same method, there's a pattern, same technology, same approach, same goal. Remove the Bennett family from the equation. But why kill Michael 2 years ago and wait until now to come after me? Danny thought about that. What changed? What's different now versus 2 years ago? The Pentagon contract, the vote, She stopped. The patents. When Michael died, I inherited his shares in the company. I became the majority stakeholder, but the technology was still in development, still years from being viable. Now it's ready, now it's worth billions. And if you die before the vote, your shares go to a trust. Someone else controls the technology. Richard. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Michael's brother. He's second in line for the trust. If I die, he gets everything. The name landed like a bomb. Danny moved to the doorway, calling out, Rodriguez, we need to talk about Richard Bennett. The FBI agent looked up from his laptop. Michael Bennett's brother? He's on our list of people to interview. Why? Because he's the one who inherits if Sarah dies. And because family members make the best assassins. They know schedules, routines, security procedures. They're trusted. Frank was already on his phone. I'm pulling Richard Bennett's file. Give me 2 minutes. Sarah had gone very still, the kind of stillness that comes right before shock or rage. Richard loved Michael. They were close. He wouldn't. People kill family members for a lot less than $2 billion. Danny kept his voice gentle but firm. When's the last time you spoke to him? Last week. He called to ask about the vote, wanted to know if I was going through with it. What did you tell him? That I was honoring Michael's wishes, that the technology would go to the Pentagon as intended. Frank returned with a tablet, pulling up files. Richard Bennett, 62 years old, former VP of Bennett Defense Systems, forced out 8 years ago after a financial scandal involving Chinese investors. He was cleared legally, but the board pushed him out. No current employment, lives in a condo in Center City, drives a late-model Audi, tax returns show minimal income. Rodriguez leaned in. Chinese investors, what kind of scandal? Allegedly tried to sell company secrets. Nothing provable enough to prosecute, but enough to get him fired. The pieces assembled themselves into a picture Danny didn't like. So we have a man with financial problems, connections to foreign buyers, and a grudge against the company that pushed him out. His brother dies in a convenient accident. 2 years later, when the technology is finally valuable, his sister-in-law is targeted with the same method. Sarah's hands were shaking. He came to Michael's funeral, cried, told me I was family, that he'd always be there for me. And all that time we don't know anything yet. Rodriguez was already typing. But we're bringing him in for questioning. Frank, get me his current location. Frank made the call, waited. His expression changed. No answer, I'm trying his office. Another call. Office says he hasn't been in for 3 days. Claimed he was dealing with a family emergency out of state. Danny felt ice in his veins. 3 days ago. Right when someone would need to start setting up vehicle sabotage, planning routes, coordinating with hired professionals. Rodriguez stood. I'm issuing a warrant. Every agent in the state will be looking for Richard Bennett within the hour. The radio on Frank's belt crackled. Unit 2 to command. We have activity at the perimeter. White van, same description as earlier. Drove past twice in the last 10 minutes. Everyone in the room froze. Danny moved to the window, careful to stay behind the bulletproof glass. The street below was dark, rain-slicked, empty. But somewhere out there, someone was circling, probing, looking for weaknesses. Frank joined him at the window. They found us. Or they're making sure we know they're watching. Psychological warfare. Keep us off balance. What would you do if you were running this operation? Danny thought about Baghdad. About the tactics insurgents used when they couldn't win through direct assault. I'd make noise in one place while I set up the real attack somewhere else. The van is a distraction. The question is, distraction from what? As if answering him, the lights went out, not just in the safe house. Every building visible from the window went dark simultaneously. A planned blackout, coordinated and precise. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Frank was already on the radio. "All units, report status." Responses came back one by one. Guards were in position. Vehicles were secure. No breach detected. But the building was dark and someone out there had just demonstrated they could cut the power whenever they wanted. Rodriguez pulled out his phone, using it as a flashlight. "Local power company reports a substation failure, affecting 6 square blocks. Could be coincidence." Could be. Danny didn't believe in coincidence anymore. Or it could be someone testing our response time, seeing how we handle emergencies, mapping our defensive procedures. Sarah's voice came from near the couch, steady despite the darkness. "How long until power comes back?" "Company says 2 hours minimum." Rodriguez looked at Frank. "We can't stay here blind and exposed. I'm calling for extraction." "Extraction where?" Frank's hand was on his sidearm now, ready. "Every location we go to, they find us. Someone's feeding them information." The implication hung heavy. A leak. Someone on the inside, someone with access to security protocols and safe house locations. Someone who knew exactly where Sarah would be and when. Danny's mind worked through the math. Who knew about this location? FBI team, my security detail, and local police. Rodriguez's face had gone hard. "We need to assume the leak is in one of those groups. Or all of them." Danny moved away from the window. "Professionals with resources don't rely on single points of failure. They buy redundant information streams, multiple sources telling them the same thing." A phone rang in the darkness. Sarah's phone, the screen glowing blue in the emergency lighting. She looked at the caller ID and her face went pale. "It's Richard." Everyone went still. Rodriguez moved fast, pulling recording equipment from his bag. "Answer it. Keep him talking. We'll trace the call." Sarah's hand shook as she lifted the phone, put it on speaker. "Richard?" The voice that came through was smooth, cultured, and utterly calm. "Sarah, I heard about the incident on Route 76. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Where are you?" "Dealing with some business, but I saw the news reports about a vehicle accident involving a convoy. I know your security protocols, Sarah. I know that wasn't a random mechanical failure." Sarah's eyes met Danny's across the room. "What do you know about it, Richard?" A pause, long enough to be significant. "I know that tomorrow's vote is important to a lot of people. Important enough that some of them would do desperate things to influence the outcome. Are you one of those people?" "I'm family, Sarah. I loved Michael. I would never hurt you." "Then why haven't you been answering your phone for 3 days?" Another pause. When Richard spoke again, his voice had changed, colder. "Because I've been trying to protect you. Trying to figure out who wanted you dead before they succeeded." "And did you figure it out?" "I have some ideas, but Sarah, you need to understand. Michael's technology, the AI systems, they're worth more than money. They're worth power. The kind of power that nations kill for. If you go through with this vote, if you give the Pentagon exclusive access, you're painting a target on yourself that no FBI safe house can protect you from." Danny caught Rodriguez's eye. The agent was typing furiously on his laptop, trying to trace the call. Sarah's voice stayed steady. "What are you suggesting, Richard?" "I'm suggesting you consider other options. There are buyers who would pay 3 times what the Pentagon is offering. Buyers who would make you wealthy beyond measure. Buyers who would ensure your safety because you're valuable to them." "You mean Chinese military contractors?" "I mean people who appreciate what Michael built. People who won't bury his work in classified projects and congressional oversight. People who tried to kill me tonight." Silence, heavy and damning. When Richard spoke again, all pretense was gone. "That wasn't supposed to happen. The incident on Route 76, that wasn't my doing. I've been trying to negotiate your safety, trying to find a peaceful resolution." "But Sarah, you need to understand. These people don't negotiate with obstacles. They remove them. If you insist on this vote, if you proceed with the Pentagon contract, I can't protect you." "I don't need your protection, Richard." "No." His voice turned sad. You need theirs. The people around you right now, the FBI agents and security guards and whoever else you've brought into this. They can't stop what's coming. But I can. Walk away from the vote. Abstain. Let the board make the decision, and I promise you, I'll make sure you survive. Sarah's hands were fists at her sides. You killed Michael. The accusation hung in the air, electric and terrible. Richard's response came quiet, almost gentle. Michael was brilliant but naive. He thought he could build weapon systems and control how they were used. Thought he could pick sides in a global arms race. He was wrong. And when he refused to see reason, when he wouldn't consider the financial realities, you had him murdered. I did what was necessary to preserve his legacy, to make sure his work went to people who would value it properly. And Sarah, I'm offering you the same consideration. Walk away, live, be wealthy, or stand firm and join Michael. Danny moved before thinking, grabbing the phone from Sarah's hand. Richard Bennett, this is Danny Cross, the mechanic who found your sabotage, the one who stopped your trap from working. A beat of surprised silence. Ah, the variable I didn't account for. You must be very proud of yourself, Mr. Cross. I'm the reason Sarah's alive. I'm the reason your entire operation failed. And I'm telling you now, you come at her again, you try anything else, and I will make sure every piece of evidence we have leads straight back to you. Richard's laugh was soft. Evidence? Mr. Cross, I'm calling from a burner phone that will be in a river in 5 minutes. The people who tampered with Sarah's vehicle are untraceable professionals who take cash and leave no trail. And even if you could prove I was involved, which you can't, I'm a grieving brother concerned about his sister-in-law's safety, nothing more. We'll see about that. Yes, we will. The warmth drained from Richard's voice completely. Mr. Cross, let me be very clear. You've inserted yourself into something that doesn't concern you. You've disrupted a carefully planned operation. And while I respect your military background, yes, I know about Iraq, about EOD, about your somewhat impressive service record. You're out of your depth. These aren't insurgents in Baghdad. These are professionals with resources and patience. They will find you. They will find your daughter. Danny's world narrowed to a point. You threaten my daughter again, and there won't be enough of you left to identify. Not a threat, a fact. You have maybe 12 hours before they track you down, maybe less. I suggest you spend those hours wisely. Take Emma somewhere safe, somewhere far from this mess, and leave Sarah to handle her own problems. The call ended. Danny stood there, phone in hand, every combat instinct screaming. Richard knew about Emma. Knew her name, had probably known for hours since the motorcycles had spotted Danny, since professionals with resources had started digging into who'd disrupted their operation. Rodriguez pulled his laptop around. Call was routed through 4 different cell towers. He's mobile, switching locations. We'll never trace it in time. Frank was already moving. We need to secure Danny's daughter. Now! Danny was dialing before Frank finished speaking. Mrs. Parker answered on the 3rd ring, groggy. Danny, it's almost 1 in the morning. Mrs. Parker, I need you to wake Emma and get her out of the house. Now, don't pack anything. Just take her and go to the Residence Inn on Roosevelt Boulevard. Check in under your name. Don't tell anyone where you are. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. She must have heard something in his voice because she didn't ask questions. We're leaving now. Thank you. He ended the call and turned to Rodriguez. I need a car. I need to get to my daughter before anyone else does. We can send a protection detail. No. The word came out harsh. Every detail you've sent, every safe house you've used, they've found. I'm not trusting my daughter's life to a system that's been compromised. Sarah stepped forward. Then I'm coming with you. Danny started to argue, but she cut him off. You saved my life multiple times. You don't get to shut me out now. And frankly, Mr. Cross, you need me. You need resources, money, contacts, things I have and you don't. She was right, and he hated it. Hated that Emma was in danger because of choices he'd made. Hated that walking away 3 hours ago would have kept her safe. Hated that the right thing to do and the safe thing to do were different. and he'd chosen right. But a man who won't risk everything for his child isn't a man at all. Fine, we go together. But we go now and we don't stop until Emma's somewhere they can't find her. Frank threw him a set of keys. Take the silver sedan, it's not registered to the FBI, not part of the convoy, they won't be looking for it. Rodriguez was already on his phone, coordinating. I'll have agents at the hotel within 20 minutes, and Danny, I'm putting out an APB on Richard Bennett. Every cop in the state will be hunting him. Danny caught the keys, already moving toward the door. Sarah was right behind him, trading her borrowed sweater for a jacket someone handed her. They made it to the elevator when Frank called out, "Cross, one more thing." Danny turned. "You were right about Morrison. 4 minutes was faster than anyone else, but tonight you were exactly on time. Remember that." The words landed somewhere deep, somewhere that had been broken since February 2014. Danny nodded once and stepped into the elevator. The garage was dark, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. The sedan was where Frank said it would be, the anonymous gray vehicle that could have belonged to anyone. They got in without speaking. Danny started the engine, pulled out of the garage, and drove into the rain. Sarah broke the silence first. "Where's the hotel?" 15 minutes north, maybe less if the roads are clear. And if they're watching the house, then we deal with it. Danny's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing through scenarios, ambush points, defensive positions, how to get Emma out if the situation went bad. Sarah was watching him. "You're terrified." "Yes, but you're still functioning, still planning." "How?" "Because being terrified and being paralyzed are different things. Fear gives you information. Paralysis gets you killed." They drove through empty streets, the storm turning everything into blurred shapes and reflected light. Danny took a route that avoided major intersections, stuck to residential areas where houses sat dark and streets were empty. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Parker. "At hotel, room 237, Emma's asking questions." He texted back. "Tell her I'll explain everything when I get there. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone but me." "She's safe?" Sarah asked. "For now. But Richard knows about her, which means whoever he's working with knows about her, which means we have maybe hours before they track her down. So we take her somewhere else, somewhere farther. And keep running? For how long? Until Richard's caught? Until his buyers give up? Until Emma's childhood is defined by running and hiding and looking over her shoulder?" Sarah's voice was quiet. "What's the alternative?" Danny's jaw set. "We end this, tonight. We find Richard before he finds us. We get evidence that ties him to the sabotage, and we make damn sure he can't hurt anyone ever again. The FBI is already looking for him. FBI is playing by rules. Richard isn't. We need to think like he does, anticipate his moves, get ahead of him." "How?" Danny thought about Iraq, about tracking insurgent cells, about the ways people revealed themselves when they thought they were invisible. "He called you specifically, tried to negotiate. That means he still thinks he can win, still thinks there's a deal to be made. People who think they're winning get sloppy. They make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind where they show up in person to close the deal, to make sure you understand the stakes." Sarah's eyes widened. "You think he'll come to the hotel?" "I think if he wants to stop the vote tomorrow, he needs to convince you tonight. And convincing you means showing up with leverage, with proof that he can protect you or destroy you." "That's insane. He knows the FBI is looking for him." "He also knows the FBI is protecting you, which means you're surrounded by agents and security. Too many witnesses, too much risk." Danny took a turn, heading toward the hotel. "But if you were somewhere unexpected, somewhere quiet, somewhere only a few people knew about, that's where he'd make his move." Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. "You're using Emma as bait." "I'm using the hotel as a trap. Emma's there, yeah. But Mrs. Parker's there too. And in about 10 minutes, I'll be there. And if Richard's people are watching your locations, tracking your movements, they'll see you went to a hotel instead of staying at the safe house. They'll wonder why. They'll investigate." And when they do, we'll be ready. They pulled into the hotel parking lot at 1:23 a.m. The Residence Inn was a mid-range chain hotel, the kind of place where families stayed during relocations and business travelers bunked for extended assignments. Nothing special, nothing memorable. Perfect. Danny parked near a side entrance, killed the engine. Call Rodriguez. Tell him where we are. Tell him to send backup, but keep it subtle. No sirens, no obvious police presence. We need Richard to think this is a safe move, not a trap. Sarah made the call while Danny surveyed the parking lot. 30 cars, spread across marked spaces, 2 entrances, security cameras over the doors, good visibility. Hard to approach without being seen. They entered through the side door, took the stairs to the second floor. Room 237 was at the end of a hallway, door closed. Danny knocked 3 times, waited, knocked twice more. The door opened and Emma flew into his arms so fast he almost stumbled. She was crying, shaking, and he held her and felt his heart shatter into pieces because she shouldn't be scared, shouldn't be involved, shouldn't have to know that her father's choices had put her in danger. It's okay, baby, I've got you. You're safe. Mrs. Parker stood in the doorway wearing a raincoat over pajamas. She's been terrified, won't tell me what's happening, but she knows it's bad. Danny carried Emma into the room, Sarah following. The space was generic hotel, 2 beds, a TV, a bathroom, windows that looked out over the parking lot. He sat on the bed, Emma in his lap, and tried to figure out how to explain the unexplainable to a 9-year-old who deserved better than any of this. Emma's grip on Danny's jacket didn't loosen even after 5 minutes of sitting on the hotel bed. Her face was pressed against his chest, tears soaking through the fabric, and he stroked her hair with one hand, while his other hand stayed free-ready because even here he couldn't fully let his guard down. Mrs. Parker had retreated to the corner chair, watching with the kind of worried expression that came from decades of seeing children scared and knowing there was only so much comfort anyone could offer. Sarah stood by the window, careful to stay away from the gleam, her phone in hand as she coordinated with Rodriguez. Danny finally spoke, his voice low and steady. Emma, I need you to listen to me. Can you do that? She nodded against his chest but didn't pull back. The woman I helped tonight, her name is Sarah. Some bad people tried to hurt her. They failed because I was there. But now those bad people know about me, and they know about you. Emma went very still. Then she pulled back enough to look at his face, her eyes red but clear. Are they coming here? The question was so direct, so unchildlike that it hurt. I don't know, maybe. But if they do, I'll be ready. I promise you no one is going to hurt you. Like you promised you'd be home at 8? The words landed like a punch. She wasn't being cruel, wasn't trying to hurt him. She was just stating a fact. His promises weren't always reliable when the world got complicated. No, not like that. He cupped her face in his hands, made sure she was looking at him. Emma, I will die before I let anyone hurt you. That's not a promise, that's a fact. Do you understand? She studied his face, reading something there that satisfied whatever test she was running. Okay, I believe you. Good. Now I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to be brave, like we talked about. Fear is information, right? You're scared, that's okay, that's smart, but you can't let it stop you from thinking, from being ready. Can you do that? Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do I need to be ready for? We might need to leave fast. We might need to hide. We might need to run. I don't know which one yet, but when I tell you to do something, I need you to do it immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Trust me to keep you safe and do exactly what I say. She nodded, her jaw setting with determination that looked too old for her face. I can do that. I know you can. He kissed her forehead and stood, moving her gently to sit beside Mrs. Parker. Stay with Mrs. Parker. Sarah's going to stay in here with you. I'm going to be in the hallway, watching, making sure we're safe. Emma grabbed his hand before he could move away. Dad, the bad people. Are they the same kind as in Iraq? The question froze him. He'd never told her details about Iraq, never explained what he'd actually done there beyond the sanitized version about keeping soldiers safe. But she'd pieced together enough from overheard conversations, from the way he woke up at night, from the gaps in stories he wouldn't fill in. Similar, different weapons, same kind of thinking. Did you stop them before in Iraq? Most of the time. And the time you didn't? He thought about Morrison, about 4 minutes that weren't fast enough, about carrying that failure for 5 years. I learned from it, made sure it never happened again. Emma seemed to accept this. She let go of his hand. Then you'll stop them now too. The faith in her voice was absolute and terrifying. Danny nodded once and moved toward the door. Sarah intercepted him before he reached the hallway. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Rodriguez has teams positioning around the hotel, undercover. They'll look like late-night travelers, maintenance staff. No one will know they're FBI. How long until they're in place? 30 minutes. Tell them to hurry. If Richard's people are tracking your movements, they already know you came here. They're either planning their approach or they're already on site watching, waiting for the right moment. Sarah's face was pale but composed. What do you need from me? Stay with Emma and Mrs. Parker. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone except me or Rodriguez. And if something happens, if you hear shots or shouting, you take Emma into the bathroom, lock that door too, and you don't come out until police clear the building. What are you going to do? Make sure nothing happens. He slipped into the hallway before she could argue. The corridor was empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead, industrial carpet muffling his footsteps. Fire exit at one end, elevator at the other. 4 other rooms on this floor, all dark and quiet. Danny positioned himself halfway between Emma's room and the elevator, his back against the wall where he could see both directions. His phone buzzed. Text from Frank. FBI team ETA 25 minutes. Local PD setting outer perimeter. You're not alone. But he was alone. For the next 25 minutes, it was just him standing between Emma and whoever Richard sent. Just him and whatever training remained sharp enough to matter after 5 years of civilian life. His hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised him. The tremor that started every morning, the physical manifestation of PTSD that had become part of his routine. It was gone. Replaced by the cold clarity that used to come when he was suiting up for bomb disposal, when fear turned into focus because there was no room for anything else. The elevator dinged. Danny's hand went to his waistband, fingers touching the grip of Frank's backup pistol he'd borrowed before leaving the safe house. He didn't draw it. Not yet. Could be a guest, could be hotel staff, could be nothing. The doors opened and a man stepped out. Mid-50s, casual clothes, carrying a small duffel bag. He looked like any other traveler arriving late. Looked normal except for the way his eyes swept the hallway with professional assessment. Except for the way he moved with controlled precision, except for the bulge under his jacket that suggested body armor. Their eyes met. The man smiled, friendly and meaningless. Evening. Evening. Danny didn't move from his position. The man walked past, heading toward a room at the far end. Danny watched him key into room 245, watched the door close, watched the peephole darken as someone looked back out at him. Professional. Aware, dangerous. Danny pulled out his phone, texted Rodriguez. Man just checked into room 245, armed, possibly Richard's advance team. The response came immediately. Don't engage, FBI 3 minutes out, 3 minutes. Danny checked his watch. 1:47 a.m. The night stretched ahead like a minefield where every decision could be the wrong one. The stairwell door opened and another figure emerged. Woman this time, younger, athletic build, moving with the same professional awareness as the first man. She didn't even glance at Danny, just walked straight to room 243 and disappeared inside. 2 now, positioned on opposite ends of Emma's room. Classic flanking setup. Danny's phone buzzed again. Rodriguez, confirming 2 occupants' rooms 243 and 245, entered building separately. Paid cash. No ID on file. FBI entry team en route, but traffic delayed. 7 minutes. 7 minutes. A lifetime in tactical situations. Danny moved back toward Emma's room, knocked the pattern. 3-2-1. Sarah opened it immediately, her face tight with controlled fear. 2 rooms on this floor just got occupied. Professionals, FBI is 7 minutes out. What do we do? You stay here. I'm going to make sure they don't get close enough to try anything. He closed the door, heard the deadbolt slide home, and positioned himself directly in front of room 237. If anyone wanted Emma, they'd have to go through him first. The door to 245 opened. The man emerged, no longer carrying the duffel, hands empty and visible. He walked down the hallway toward Danny with the casual confidence of someone who wasn't worried about threats. Danny straightened, making himself bigger, making it clear he wasn't moving. The man stopped 10 feet away. Up close, Danny could see details, the way his jacket hung wrong on one side from the weight of a concealed weapon, the earpiece barely visible behind his left ear, the small scar on his neck that looked like old shrapnel damage. "You're blocking the hallway." The man's voice was polite, almost friendly. "Fire code says I can stand wherever I want as long as I'm not blocking emergency exits." "That's technically true." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But you're making the other guests uncomfortable." "Don't see any other guests." "You will. Hotels filling up, late arrivals, people needing rooms." The man took one step closer. "You look tired. Maybe you should go back to your room, get some rest." Danny's hand drifted toward his waistband. "I'm fine where I am." The man noticed the movement. His own posture shifted, subtle but unmistakable, preparing. "I don't want trouble, just trying to be friendly." "Then go back to your room." "Can't do that. Got a job to finish." The words hung there, confirmation and threat wrapped together. Danny's fingers touched the pistol grip. "What kind of job?" "The kind that pays very well. The kind that doesn't leave witnesses." The man's hand moved toward his jacket. "Nothing personal. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Story of my life. 2 things happened simultaneously. The man's hand went for his weapon. Danny drew first, muscle memory from hundreds of training drills overriding thought. The pistol came up, finger on the trigger, targeting center mass. "Don't!" The man froze, hand halfway to his weapon. For 3 seconds they stood there, locked in a standoff that could end in gunfire or surrender or something else entirely. Then the stairwell door burst open and FBI agents flooded the hallway, weapons drawn, shouting commands that echoed off the walls. The man's hands went up slowly, his expression shifting from confidence to calculation. Measuring odds, deciding if resistance was worth it. He chose surrender. Smart man. Rodriguez appeared at Danny's shoulder. "Clear your weapon. We've got this." Danny lowered the pistol, safed it, stepped back. Adrenaline was spiking through his system now that the immediate threat had passed, making his hands shake again, making his breath come fast. "The woman in 243? Already in custody. Both subjects are secured, building is locked down. You did good." Danny wanted to argue that he'd nearly had to shoot someone in a hotel hallway 20 feet from where his daughter was hiding. That nothing about this was good. That every choice he'd made tonight had led Emma deeper into danger. But Rodriguez was right in the technical sense. The threats had been neutralized without shots fired, without casualties, without Emma seeing violence. The door to room 237 opened and Emma appeared, Mrs. Parker trying to hold her back but failing. Emma saw Danny and ran, and he caught her, held her, felt her trembling against him. "I heard shouting. I thought, I'm okay, everything's okay, the bad people are caught." "All of them?" Danny met Sarah's eyes over Emma's head. Sarah shook her head fractionally. Richard was still out there, still planning, still dangerous. The ones who were here were working on the rest. FBI agents were everywhere now, clearing rooms, securing the floor, establishing a perimeter that actually felt secure. Rodriguez approached with his phone. "We need to move you, all of you, new location, one we know isn't compromised." Where? Federal building downtown, secure floor, full protection until we locate Richard Bennett. Danny looked at his watch, 2:15 a.m. The board meeting was at 10. 7 hours and 45 minutes for Richard to make another move, to try again, to finish what he'd started. How close are you to finding him? Every available agent is searching. We've got his face on every traffic camera in the city. His car is flagged. His credit cards are being monitored. We'll find him. Before 10 a.m.? Rodriguez didn't answer, which was answer enough. Sarah stepped forward. The vote. If I don't show up, if I abstain, Richard wins anyway. The board sells Michael's technology and Richard gets his payout. If you show up, you're exposing yourself, making yourself a target. I'm already a target. At least this way I control the terms. Rodriguez shook his head. Ms. Bennett, I can't authorize. You don't need to authorize anything. I'm not under arrest. I'm a witness, not a prisoner. If I want to attend my own company's board meeting, that's my choice. A choice that could get you killed. Then protect me. Isn't that your job? The argument continued, but Danny stopped listening. His mind was working through scenarios, through what Richard would do next. The hotel attack had failed. His hired professionals were in custody. His timeline was collapsing. He had one chance left, the board meeting itself. Danny's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Cross, I hope your daughter is safe. Richard's voice was calm, almost pleasant. Danny's blood went to ice. How did you get this number? I have resources you can't imagine, but that's not important. What's important is that we understand each other. I understand you tried to kill Sarah and you failed. I understand you sent people to a hotel to finish the job and they're now in FBI custody. I understand you're running out of options. Options? Mr. Cross, I have the only option that matters. I have time. You think tonight was the end game? Tonight was just cleanup. The real deadline is 10 a.m. And Sarah knows it. Danny looked at Sarah, who'd gone very still, listening. Richard continued. Here's what's going to happen. Sarah will attend the board meeting. She'll sit in her chair and she'll hear the arguments and she'll make her decision. And if she votes to give Michael's technology to the Pentagon, if she insists on this path, then everyone in that boardroom becomes complicit. Everyone becomes a target. The board members, the lawyers, the assistants. Everyone. You're threatening mass casualties. I'm explaining consequences. The technology is worth billions, Mr. Cross. Billions. Do you understand what people will do for that kind of money? What nations will authorize, what lines they'll cross? Richard's voice hardened. Sarah has a choice. Abstain from the vote. Let the board decide without her influence. Walk away wealthy and alive, or stand firm and watch everyone around her die for her principles. FBI is going to find you. Eventually. But not before 10 a.m. Not before the vote. Not before I've made my point very, very clear. A pause. You did well tonight, Mr. Cross. Saved Sarah's life. Impressed a lot of people, but you can't protect everyone. You can't be everywhere. And you can't stop what's coming if Sarah forces my hand. What do you want? I want my family's legacy protected. I want Michael's work in the hands of people who'll use it properly. I want Sarah to survive this with her wealth and her life intact. And I want you to convince her that sometimes the right choice is walking away. The call ended. Danny lowered the phone slowly. Rodriguez was watching him. That was Richard? Yeah. He's planning something at the board meeting, something big. Sarah's face had gone white. He's going to attack the entire board. Or he's bluffing, trying to scare you into backing down. Richard doesn't bluff. When he says something, he means it. Sarah pulled out her phone, typing quickly. I'm canceling the meeting, moving it to a secure location. Rodriguez nodded. Federal building. We can set up a conference room, full security. No one enters without clearance. That won't work. Danny's mind was putting pieces together. If you move the meeting, you're showing fear. You're telling Richard his threats are working. He'll adapt, wait for the next opportunity, the next moment of vulnerability. This doesn't end until he's in custody or dead. Then what do you suggest? Danny thought about Route Irish, about convoy operations where the goal wasn't avoiding ambushes but controlling when and where they happened. We use the board meeting as bait, we let Richard come to us, and we make damn sure we're ready when he does. Rodriguez started to object, but Sarah spoke first. He's right. Richard expects me to hide, to cancel, to show weakness. If I do that, I'm giving him control. But if I proceed, if I walk into that boardroom like nothing's changed, I force his hand. I make him commit to a plan on our timeline, not his. You're talking about using yourself as bait. I'm talking about ending this. Today, before anyone else gets hurt. Sarah's voice had gone hard, all the fear burned away by something colder and more determined. My husband is dead. My company is under attack. My life has been threatened 3 times in one night. I'm done hiding. I'm done reacting. It's time to be proactive. Emma tugged on Danny's sleeve. He looked down at her, saw the fear in her eyes that she was trying so hard to hide. Dad, what's happening? He crouched to her level. The bad people are trying to stop Ms. Bennett from going to work tomorrow. We're trying to stop them from stopping her. By using her as bait, like when you use cheese to catch mice? The analogy was simple enough that it almost made him smile. Yeah, kind of like that. But the mice don't know the cheese is a trap. These bad people are smart. They'll know. They might. But sometimes when you know something's a trap, you're so focused on the trap you miss the other dangers. Emma thought about this. What other dangers? Me, Rodriguez, all the FBI agents, all the protection we're going to put in place. Richard thinks he can outsmart us. We're going to prove him wrong. And then it'll be over. Then we can go home and everything will be normal. Danny wanted to promise her yes. Wanted to tell her that by noon tomorrow this would all be a bad memory. That they'd go back to their regular life of school and work and checking under the car every morning. But Emma had learned to tell when he was lying, so he told her the truth. I don't know, I hope so, but baby, I need you to understand something. No matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, I will always come back to you. Always, that's not a hope. That's a promise I will keep even if it kills me. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding tight. Don't die, Dad. Please don't die. I won't. I've got too much to live for. Rodriguez cleared his throat. If we're doing this, we need to plan. Now. The meeting is in 7 hours. That gives us time to set up security, coordinate with local police, establish protocols. But Ms. Bennett, I need you to understand. This is dangerous, extremely dangerous. Richard has already demonstrated he's willing to kill. If we proceed with this plan, people might die. People already died. Michael. Probably others I don't know about. I'm tired of letting Richard dictate terms. Sarah's jaw set. We do this. We end it. Whatever it takes. The next 5 hours were a blur of planning and preparation. They moved to the federal building where Rodriguez commandeered a conference room and turned it into a tactical operations center. Maps of the Bennett Defense Systems headquarters went up on walls. Floor plans were studied. Entry points were identified. Security protocols were reviewed and revised. Frank coordinated with Bennett's internal security team, explaining the situation in terms vague enough to avoid panic but specific enough to get cooperation. The board meeting would proceed as scheduled. Sarah would attend in person. FBI agents would be positioned throughout the building in plain clothes, ready to respond to any threat. The key question was how Richard would make his move. Direct assault seemed unlikely, too public, too many witnesses, too many ways for it to fail. But sabotage had already been his method. Indirect attacks designed to look like accidents. Danny studied the building schematics, looking for vulnerabilities. Elevators could be tampered with. Fire suppression systems could be weaponized. Gas lines could be compromised. A dozen different ways to kill people while maintaining plausible deniability. He won't do it himself. Danny pointed to the main conference room on the 15th floor where the board meeting would take place. Richard's too smart to be on site when it happens. He'll have someone else pull the trigger. Rodriguez nodded. Which means we're looking for his proxy. Someone with access to the building. Someone who can move freely without raising suspicion. Employee, maintenance staff, security guard, could be anyone. Sarah was going through personnel files, flagging anyone who'd been hired in the last 6 months. 47 new employees since Michael died. That's a lot of potential suspects. Narrow it down. Who has access to mechanical systems? Who could sabotage infrastructure without being noticed? The list shortened to 12 names. Rodriguez started running background checks, looking for anything that connected them to Richard. Financial troubles, criminal records, foreign contacts, anything that suggested vulnerability or compromise. At 6 a.m., Emma fell asleep on a couch in the corner of the operations center, Mrs. Parker dozing in a chair beside her. Danny covered them both with jackets and went back to planning. At 7 a.m., Rodriguez's phone rang. He listened, his expression darkening, and ended the call with controlled urgency. Richard Bennett's car was just found in long-term parking at the airport. He's running. Sarah stood abruptly. Or he's making us think he's running. Either way, we've got airline manifests showing no Richard Bennett on any outgoing flights. If he left the country, he did it under a fake identity, which we'll never find in time. Danny looked at the clock. 3 hours until the board meeting. He's not running. He's going to ground, waiting to see if his plan works. What plan? His people are in custody, his cover's blown. What can he possibly... The explosion came from somewhere in the building below them. Not close, not immediate danger, but loud enough to rattle windows, to trigger alarms, to send everyone in the operations center reaching for weapons. Rodriguez was on his radio instantly. All units report. What was that? Responses came back fragmented. Explosion in the parking garage. No casualties reported. Fire suppression activated. Building on lockdown. Danny was already moving, heading for the stairwell. Sarah followed, despite Rodriguez shouting for her to stay put. They descended 15 floors, emerging into a parking garage thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burned plastic and metal. The explosion had been small, controlled, just big enough to destroy a single vehicle, Sarah's remaining SUV from the convoy. Danny examined the wreckage, noting the blast pattern, the way the fire had concentrated on the engine compartment. Shape charge, military grade, designed to disable, not to kill. Why blow up the car now? Why not wait until I was in it? Because the car isn't the target. Danny's mind was racing. The car is the message. Richard's telling us he can still reach you, that he's still in control, that nowhere is safe. Rodriguez arrived with fire teams, surveying the damage. This was placed sometime in the last 2 hours. Security cameras show nothing. They were looped, showing old footage. Whoever did this knew our systems. Inside job. Danny turned to Sarah. Someone on your security team is working for Richard. Frank appeared from the stairwell, his face grim. I just got a call, anonymous tip, said to check Richard Bennett's office at the company headquarters. Said we'd find something interesting. It's a trap. Probably, but we have to check. Rodriguez dispatched a team while the rest of them returned to the operations center. Danny paced, mind working through possibilities. The car explosion was misdirection. The anonymous tip was bait. Everything Richard did had layers, had backup plans, had redundancies. At 8:30 a.m., the team returned from Richard's office. They brought a laptop. Found it in his desk, password protected, but our tech guys cracked it in 10 minutes. The agent pulled up files. Email correspondence with Chinese military contractors. Payment records showing wire transfers totaling $8 million over 2 years. And detailed plans for tonight's sabotage. The tire cut, the brake line, the oil slick, everything. Sarah stared at the screen. He documented his own crime? He documented his brother's murder too. There's a confession letter dated 2 years ago. Explains why Michael had to die, why the technology couldn't go to the Pentagon, why everything he's doing is necessary for the greater good. Danny leaned over the laptop, reading. Something was wrong. The evidence was too perfect, too complete, too convenient. This is staged. Richard wouldn't keep records like this, wouldn't leave a paper trail. Unless he wanted us to find it. Rodriguez's eyes widened. Unless he needed us to find it. Needed us all here in this building reading these files. The second explosion was bigger. Much bigger. It came from above them, from the upper floors of the federal building. The entire structure shook, lights flickered, alarms screamed, and through the windows Danny could see smoke billowing from the 20th floor. Rodriguez was shouting into his radio, coordinating evacuation. Frank was pulling Sarah toward the exits. Danny grabbed Emma, who'd woken screaming, and ran. They made it to the street as emergency vehicles converged. Fire trucks, police, ambulances. The federal building's upper floors were burning, flames visible through shattered windows. Danny set Emma down but kept her close, scanning the crowd for threats. Richard had just attacked a federal building, had killed FBI agents, had caused millions in damage, had committed an act of domestic terrorism. There was no coming back from this, no negotiation, no mercy. Sarah was on her phone, her voice shaking. The board meeting, it's still scheduled, still happening in 90 minutes. You can't go. Richard just proved he'll blow up buildings to stop you. Which is exactly why I have to go. If I don't, he wins. The technology gets sold, Michael died for nothing, and Richard walks away wealthy while I hide in fear for the rest of my life. Sarah's eyes were fierce. No, I'm going to that meeting. I'm voting, and I'm ending this. Rodriguez grabbed her arm. You'll be killed. Maybe, but I'll die doing the right thing. That's more than most people get. Danny understood. Understood the math she was doing, the calculation of what was worth dying for. He'd done the same math in Iraq, had decided that protecting 47 lives was worth risking his own. Sarah was making the same choice, but Emma was crying, was terrified, was looking at Danny like he could somehow fix this, could make the world safe again. Power doesn't protect you. It just paints a target on your back. But sometimes you wear that target anyway because the alternative is letting evil win. Danny made his decision. I'm going with you. To the meeting. As protection. Danny, no, this isn't your fight. It became my fight when I stopped to help you on Route 76 when Richard threatened my daughter. When he blew up a federal building and killed people who were just trying to do their jobs. Danny's voice was steel. You want to walk into that boardroom and cast your vote? Fine. But I'm walking in with you, and anyone who wants to stop you will have to go through me first. Sarah searched his face, looking for doubt or fear or hesitation. Found none. Okay, we do this together. Rodriguez started to protest, but Frank cut him off. Let them go. We'll establish a perimeter around the building. Full tactical team. Snipers on adjacent rooftops. If Richard makes a move, we'll be ready. And if he's already inside? If he's compromised the building? Then we deal with it. But we can't let him win just because we're afraid. 90 minutes later, Danny stood in the lobby of Bennett Defense Systems headquarters, watching Sarah enter the private elevator that would take her to the 15th floor boardroom. She'd changed into a business suit, transformed from frightened CEO into the Iron Lady her board expected. Only her eyes showed the fear underneath. Danny rode up with her, Frank, and 4 FBI agents in tactical gear. The elevator was silent except for the hum of machinery and the quiet breathing of people preparing for violence. The doors opened onto the executive floor, plush carpets, original artwork on walls, glass conference room at the far end where board members were already assembling. Danny scanned faces looking for Richard, for threats, for anything wrong. The board members looked exactly like what they were. Wealthy executives in expensive suits, annoyed at the security presence but tolerating it because Sarah was the majority shareholder. The chairman called the meeting to order at exactly 10 a.m. Sarah took her seat at the head of the table. Danny positioned himself by the door, eyes constantly moving. Frank was outside in the hallway. FBI agents were staged throughout the building. Everything was as secure as it could be. The chairman began speaking about the Pentagon contract, about fiscal projections, about strategic importance. Board members asked questions. Lawyers provided answers. Everything proceeded with corporate efficiency. Danny's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Final warning. Walk away. He showed it to Rodriguez, who'd positioned himself in the hallway. The agent's face went hard. We're tracing it now. The board discussion continued. Arguments for and against the contract were presented. Someone mentioned Chinese buyers offering better terms. Someone else talked about patriotic duty. The debate was civil, professional, and utterly surreal given that people had died over this decision. Then Sarah stood. Before we vote, I want to say something about my husband. The room went quiet. Michael Bennett spent 8 years developing this technology. He believed it could save American lives. He believed it should serve American interests. He believed that some things were more important than profit. Her voice strengthened. 2 years ago, my husband died in what I was told was a car accident. Tonight I learned it was murder. Sabotage designed to look like mechanical failure, the same method that was used tonight to try to kill me. Board members shifted uncomfortably. The chairman started to speak, but Sarah cut him off. Richard Bennett, my brother-in-law, ordered Michael's death, ordered my death, all to gain control of this technology so he could sell it to foreign buyers. He's murdered. He's committed terrorism. He's betrayed everything this company stands for, and he did it for money. She pulled out her phone, projecting the files from Richard's laptop onto the conference room screen. Email chains, payment records, the confession letter. This is what we're voting on today, not just a contract, not just profit margins. We're voting on whether we honor Michael's sacrifice or whether we let his murderer profit from his death. We're voting on whether principles matter or whether everything is for sale if the price is high enough. The room was dead silent. Sarah's voice dropped to something quieter but infinitely more powerful. I'm voting yes on the Pentagon contract. I'm honoring my husband's wishes. And I'm telling Richard Bennett that he can threaten me, attack me, try to kill me, but he cannot make me betray the man I loved. Some things are not for sale. Some principles are worth dying for. And this is one of them. She sat down. The chairman looked shaken. Ms. Bennett, perhaps given the circumstances, we should table this vote. No. We vote now. Show of hands. All in favor of the Pentagon contract? Sarah's hand went up. One by one, other hands followed. Not all of them. 3 board members abstained, but the majority voted yes. The contract passed. Sarah had won. And then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Danny's hand went to his weapon. Frank burst through the door, FBI agents behind him. Building's in lockdown. Someone triggered the fire suppression system. Halon gas is flooding the lower floors. Danny grabbed Sarah, pulling her toward the exit. We need to move, now! But the elevator wouldn't respond. Emergency stairs were the only option. They ran, footsteps echoing in the stairwell, descending 15 floors as alarms screamed and smoke began filtering up from below. They burst into the lobby to find chaos. Building security evacuating employees, fire trucks arriving, and standing in the middle of it all, calm and composed, was Richard Bennett. He saw Sarah and smiled. You voted yes. I'm disappointed but not surprised. He spread his hands. You understand this means I can't let you leave. FBI agents converged, weapons drawn. Richard didn't seem concerned. Shoot me, and this entire building comes down. I've placed charges on every support column in the basement. Shape charges, military grade, enough to collapse all 20 floors straight down. The trigger is in my hand. Dead man's switch. I let go. It detonates. Rodriguez's voice was steady. You'll die too. Yes, but at least I'll die knowing I stopped the technology from being misused. That I protected Michael's legacy, that I made a choice that mattered. Sarah stepped forward despite Danny trying to hold her back. Michael would hate you for this, would hate everything you've done in his name. Michael was naive. He didn't understand how the world works, but I do. And I'm willing to make the hard choices he couldn't. Danny was calculating distances, angles, possibilities. Richard's hand was steady on what looked like a modified phone, probably the detonator. Taking him down before he could trigger it would require a perfect shot, the kind of shot Danny hadn't made in 5 years. But he'd spent those 5 years fixing cars, rebuilding transmissions, working with machinery where millimeters mattered and precision was everything. His hands didn't shake when he was focused, when the work demanded perfection. He met Sarah's eyes. She understood what he was asking. She nodded fractionally. Then she spoke to Richard, her voice carrying across the lobby. "You want to kill us all? Fine. But first answer one question. Did you ever love your brother?" Richard's expression flickered. "Of course I loved him. I did this for him." "No, you did this for yourself. Michael was brilliant and kind and believed in something bigger than profit. You're none of those things. You're just a greedy old man who couldn't accept that his brother was better than him." Richard's hand tightened on the detonator. "You don't know what you're talking about." Danny moved. One shot. Center mass. Richard dropped before his finger could complete the trigger pull. The detonator clattered to the floor, inactive. FBI agents swarmed, securing Richard, confirming the threat was neutralized. Rodriguez grabbed the detonator carefully and handed it to the bomb squad that had just arrived. Danny lowered his weapon, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was crashing. Sarah was beside him, her hand on his arm. "You killed him." "No. Center mass through body armor puts you down but doesn't kill. He'll survive to stand trial." "How did you know he was wearing armor?" "The way his jacket hung. Same tell as the professionals at the hotel." Danny's voice was flat, empty. "I've seen it before." Rodriguez was coordinating cleanup, ordering building evacuation, securing the basement to defuse whatever charges Richard had actually placed. If there were any. If it hadn't all been a bluff. Frank appeared with Emma, who'd been kept safe in a police car outside. She ran to Danny and he caught her, held her, felt the weight of everything he'd done to keep her safe. "Is it over?" Her voice was small. "Yeah, baby, it's over. Can we go home?" Danny looked at Sarah, who was surrounded by FBI agents and board members and lawyers, all demanding her attention. She caught his eye and smiled, tired but genuine. "Go. Take your daughter home. We'll handle the rest." Danny started to argue, but she shook her head. "You've done enough. More than enough. You saved my life 3 times. You stopped Richard. You ended this. Now go be a father." He carried Emma toward the exit, Mrs. Parker following. Behind them, the lobby was controlled chaos as federal agents processed the scene, but Danny didn't look back. He'd done what needed doing. The rest was someone else's problem. Outside, the sun was rising over Philadelphia. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and bright. Danny set Emma down and took her hand. "Breakfast? Can we get pancakes?" "Pancakes it is." They walked away from Bennett Defense Systems, from Richard Bennett, from the night that had nearly killed them both, walked towards something that looked almost like normal life. 3 days later, Danny was in his garage working on a transmission when his phone rang. Sarah's name on the caller ID. "Mr. Cross, I hope I'm not interrupting. Just finishing a job. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you properly for everything and to make you an offer." "I'm not interested in a job, Ms. Bennett." "I know, Emma told me as much when I took her to lunch yesterday." Danny blinked. "You what?" "Emma and I had lunch. She's a remarkable young woman, smart, brave, mature beyond her years. She told me you'd never accept a corporate position because you need to be available for her, that you need flexibility that a 9-to-5 job wouldn't provide." "That's true. So I'm offering something different. A consulting contract. You maintain your independence, your garage, your schedule. But when I need expertise, security assessments, threat evaluation, anything related to keeping people safe, you're my first call, at whatever rate you name." Danny thought about the bills on his kitchen table, about Emma's shoes that were too small, about the truck's starter motor that would fail any day now. "What's the catch?" "No catch. You help me stay alive. I make sure you and Emma are taken care of. Everyone wins." "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." A pause. "Danny, thank you for stopping when you saw someone who needed help." for being the kind of person who doesn't look away from danger. The world needs more people like you. She ended the call. Danny set down his phone and returned to the transmission, hands steady, mind clear. Outside, Emma was playing in the yard, laughing at something Mrs. Parker said. The sun was shining. The bills would get paid. Life would continue. And somewhere in Philadelphia, Sarah Bennett was building her late husband's legacy while the man who'd tried to destroy it waited for trial in a federal prison. The roadside savior had done his job. Now he could just be a father again, at least until the next call came.